And again, before we solder that BME 280 board to the breadboard, it's helpful to get a sense of where we're going for sort of the final combination or configuration for how we put this all together and assemble all these boards. Ultimately, they all need to be supported and held in place, and we do that with these nylon screws and standoffs. Okay, so we have these nylon screws here, and we're going to use ultimately the BME 280 is going to have two posts that go through those open through holes at the bottom. Okay, we'll then secure those with some nuts. I'll show you how those go in just a moment. And then those are going to screw into our buck boost board. Okay, that's what manages our voltage going down from our battery or the solar panel. Okay, so that's the board in the middle, the buck boost board over there. Okay, and in a similar fashion, we put two of those nylon standoffs through, and they screw into the bottom two standoffs that are going now through the BME 280. So those just screw into each other, and that's a nice stacking configuration. And the one here in the middle is really just a support. It's not held at the top by anything. So the top board is our power management board. That's what connects to the solar panel over there, and to eventually to the battery. Okay, and the other outlet is what connects it to our buck boost board in the middle. Okay, so we use a little nylon screw over here through this through hole, and that attaches to this support, which attaches to that support, and it's ultimately held in place with a nut at the bottom. Okay, and this one here is just pressing up against the bottom of the power management board. Okay, the other way that we secure this top board, okay, because there's no actual fixture here, it's just a resting surface, we then take a much longer standoff and have that run from the power management board here, and again another nylon screw. This is a through hole here in the corner. There's a through hole, and generally for all these boards is one at each corner. Okay, so that then attaches to this long 25mm nylon screw, which then goes through the through hole of the feather huzzah board at the very bottom. Okay, so this is why we need to position all these things and attach nuts at the bottom first before we solder everything down. Okay, so we'll attach a nut there, and then a nut over there. Okay, a nut over there, and then we'll solder down the BME 280. Okay, so I'll disassemble all of this so you can see how it goes step by step. Okay, but this is just the big picture. Okay, now I know I said that these boards have in general 4 holes, one at each corner, but the BME 280, because it is a smaller board, only has 2 holes. So there's one here, and then I've driven down this 12mm nylon screw through the other hole at this corner. Okay, so I'll put another one in here so you see it. So there's one through each hole, but this is what it looks like once you put it through, and this is that nylon nut at the bottom that secures it. As it turns out, for these particular sized screws, the holes are a little bit small for the screws, but luckily because they're nylon, you can still get them through. So the nut isn't truly critical because there's such a tight fit between the screws that pretty much it holds it in place anyway without the need for the nut. Okay, but I'll tighten down this nut and I'll put in the other one, and then I'll put it in place, and you'll see how that looks once I put it on the board. Okay, afterwards I will go ahead and solder it to my breadboard as well. In a similar fashion, you're going to take a longer standoff now. Okay, this is a 25mm nylon standoff. Okay, and you're going to put it through the corner hole here of the huzzah. And again, the huzzah does have 4 holes. 2 are bigger. These 2 have a larger diameter than these 2 over here. So again, it's a bit of a tight fit to fit the screw through this hole, and you really don't need the nut. You can pretty much hold the whole thing without the benefit of the nut, but it's probably a good idea to add it in there anyway. So we'll toss that on, we'll put in the other screw and the nut into the BME 280, and then we'll solder the BME 280 down to the board. Okay, and because we've got these standoffs that stick out now from the top of the board, it's a little bit difficult to solder that BME 280 because you can't lie flat on a surface. So what I've done here is I've used these little hands to help hold it in place as I've soldered these through. And because you've got several pins to solder and you want the BME 280 to lie flat and parallel to the breadboard itself, okay, then just be careful in how you support it, because you're fighting gravity here when you first solder it. So try to get them as all to the same height when you've got these header pins sticking through, okay, so that your board doesn't come out at an angle, okay, because it's tipping for whatever reason. Alright, and then if we release it here from the clamp. Alright, and having unclamped it, and we can see the result now. Okay, so we've got my 3 standoffs. I have nylon nuts under each of them. Okay, it's now in place, so I can pick this up and it's all connected together. And I'm more or less ready to go on to my final step of assembling all the boards together, and then there's one more soldering step, and that's with our LED button. Okay, so let's go ahead and assemble everything together first before we do that button. Okay, and so this is where we're going to position our buck boost and put the nylon standoffs through it, and then we'll do the same with our power management board. Okay, so I'll show you the whole picture and I'll talk you through again, even though we've seen it once already. Okay, so now I've gathered my materials and I'll show you what we have here. We've got our 3 standoffs in there already. The 2 shorter ones going through the BME 280 are 12 millimeter in length, and the longer one through the feather huzzah is 25 millimeters. Okay, to complete what we need 2 more 12 millimeters, 2 nylon screws, and then 1 additional nylon screw that here it is over here. Okay, we'll use that as well. So the position of these boards as we mount them together is also important. Okay, so if you take a look at what we have here, ultimately what drives the whole configuration is going to be our power management board. Okay, so because we have our connection to the solar panel, the terminal from the solar panel wire cable is fairly long, okay, and we have fairly tight housing within our overall mounting enclosure. So we need this port to the solar panel to be sticking out in the towards the direction that we have the most distance, and that's me to the left over here. Okay, so we ultimately need the power management board to be in this configuration where here the capacitor is farthest away from me. Okay. And then next we've got the battery connection that'll plug in over here, and we don't have to worry too much about that. We've got enough working distance with its cable that will fit in there just fine eventually. And then the other connection is to the buck boost. Okay, so the buck boost can really go almost in either direction. Okay, but given the length of the leads as well, there's enough flexibility. If you take a look at the 4 holes, it might be easier to position to drive the screw through the 2 holes on the port that goes to the power management. Okay, so I've already screwed in the wires. Okay, so this is this 2-wire JST connection, and on one end it has the part that plugs into a port similar to what we have on the power management board. Okay, so this just plugs straight in, if I arrange it just right. Okay, so that'll plug in there or there, so that's the type of connection that'll go into there. On the other end, it's basically just exposed wire. Okay, red for positive, black for ground. Okay, so on our buck boost, what I've done is I've plugged in the red into the positive side, the black into the negative side, and I've screwed that down. You can see the whole thing is securely clamped in there. Okay, so I'm going to position these a nylon screw through that side, and then I'm going to screw it in to the 2 BME 280 standoffs that are already in place. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Okay, and I've screwed those down through. Okay, so the top 2 standoffs pass through the buck boost into the bottom 2 standoffs that are in the BME 280. Okay, and I've now positioned my 2 nylon screws that'll fasten everything together, and that'll go into the one on the right and the one on the left. Okay, and that'll all go together. And just one thing to note, it is important that you insert and clamp down this JST connection here okay, into that terminal, going to the power management board. It's important to do that before you clamp everything together, because otherwise you won't be able to access those screws once the whole thing is assembled. Okay.